start the meeting here on February 15th, 2023. Do we have any public comment for the Conservation Commission today?
I just have a quick something.
Sure.
Does Reed have anything?
Sorry, I'm not real quick this morning. I don't have any comment.
All right, thanks, Reed. Go ahead, Terry.
So I just wanted to chat about this. I ran across this email through the Association of Vermont Conservation Commissions, which I guess we're a member of. Now
Yes.
yes, okay. So I find it,
Check.
yeah, so it's good, they cash the check. It's actually kind of a great organization and they come out with some good information. And so they had their annual report and they came out with this little tiny grant information, and it's $250 to $600. And it is a short, you have to submit it by March 31st and you have to have it all done by December 1st of this year. And they had some really good, I looked back and looked at some of the projects that they've done, and Simon suggested maybe something with the bird boxes other than catamount. And I was kind of struggling to figure out where could do that. All the land here is that we own is wooded. But they had, people had put in for invasive control. Some people bought game cameras. Benches were made. They had pollinator gardens, amphibian crossing things, EAB videos, vernal pool mapping, things like that. They even had a thing Richmond did on creating that 1% or 1 cent tax rate for their ERF fund, which has been pretty successful for them. But anyway, so I was going to look into that and do, possibly do one for the bird boxes. So work on that in the next couple of weeks.
Sure. So that sounds good to me. I've seen these grants in the past, and to be honest, I think our general approach to this grant program when we brought it up in the past is that we are fortunate here in Williston to have pretty strong support from the town in funding and with the ERF and all that. And we have not applied for those grants to give other towns in the state an opportunity to get some funds, because it's a couple $100, and Williston is usually pretty supportive of projects at that scale. But if it's something you're really interested in, Terry, then go ahead and put something together and we can talk about it at when is it due?
March 31st. So we have
Okay.
a couple meetings.
So we can talk about it and
Okay.
in one of our March meetings, if you'd like.
Okay, so I won't be here for the March 1st, so it would be the.
We need to talk about that. I won't be either.
Okay, good. I just wanted to run that by, but that's a good point. Although some of the projects that came up, Jericho and Burlington.
Noticing that on their list here, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, great.
Cool, yep. All right, any other public comments? All right, and let's roll into the meeting summary from February 1st, 2023. All right, get that on the screen. Thank you, Simon. Any comments on the meeting summary from last time? I'm good.
Good.
I'll make a motion, we approve the minutes from February 1st.
Thank you, Reed.
Second.
Thank you, Gary. Any discussion on the motion? All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And any abstentions? All right. I see David joined us. How that sound? All right. Okay, thanks everyone. All right. Time for our update from the Williston Valley Park District. Nick, I'm gonna turn it over to you. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning. Thanks for having us here. We're here with Tim Larned, who is our park superintendent, and Lauren Chakotay, who is our operations manager. Yeah, so you see the sum total of our full-time staff are now on screen. In different physical locations. I think actually Lauren's in Fairleigh and Tim's in Cambridge. But thanks for having us here. I suspect mostly you want to talk about Jacob, which we're totally prepared to do. We can do the standard annual pitch pre-town meeting day, but I think launching right into Jacob would be probably a good idea. As you know, we had been working with the Baptist Church, who's been just tremendous from the get-go on establishing an access to the park. We felt it was pretty important to have a true public access where vehicles, we could have some vehicle parking and a formal trail entrance. And for those, of course, this is going back a few years, we started this process. So just let me back up a little bit. The Park District has been working with the town on the potential of us establishing a park within the town, and Jacob seems to be a good candidate for that. So we've been working in that context for the last several years. Two things have kind of messed with the timing. One is the pandemic, but the second one is the Baptist Church was proposing a housing development I'm sure you guys are aware of and probably did several reviews of. And they have tabled that project for right now. I spoke to, and there's some context here that I want to share with you guys, but I spoke to their engineer who said that there's been some changes of leadership within the church. And I think when it came time to spending real money and probably concerns about the interest rates and everything else, they've chosen to table the project. So we've done an internal reboot and looking at the other potential access points and the feasibility of those particular points. We're not giving up on the church, but had a good discussion with Simon the other day. They get credit for conservation values when they provide an access in the context of their development, which would have and still might, if they go forward at some point, they would essentially provide us an easement and a parking area and an access road to that parking area, which is a pretty spectacular outcome. What I asked Simon to look into is there a way, before I reach back out to the church directly, is there a way that access could be provided without them not being able to realize those benefits in the future if they do develop it? And I just don't have a good answer. I don't know if there's a lease or some kind of temporary easement. So we haven't given up on them. And I stress every time I talk about this, how incredibly cooperative they've been and just they've leaned into this thing. I think it's a great outcome for the community. And so the delay has nothing to do with their willingness. It's just the practical matter of them realizing benefit in order to do their development. So in deference to them, I haven't spoken to them yet because I want to get that information from the town to see if that's a possibility, what the options are before I speak to them again. But when I spoke to their engineer, they emphasized it's not about the town process, it's about our own internal decision making. So they wanted to be very clear that that's going on. So we haven't given up on that access, but it's become a thing now, and time, the clock has been ticking on this for a while. So especially the last few days, have been leaning back into our notes because we've done, quite a bit of survey work, and there was a community walk there a while back. And there are some other potential access points. And I guess one way we could do this is to we do have an image that we could pull up and look at those access points if you want to do that level of detail. We'd be happy to do that. Tim has done a lot of work with that. Would you like us to pull up that image, Miles? Simon?
I think it might be helpful to see just when like how it relates to like parking and what do others feel like?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Yep.
Okay, we
I
can all
don't know
do,
that a light bulb will go off, but we have a better chance of it.
yeah, I mean, it's interesting, actually. It's a kind of like a park management class problem.
Yes.
You have 29 acres and you got, 3 or 4 sort of good access points, all with positives and negatives.
Do you want to zoom into my recreation and tourism class this semester and talk about this?
Sure.
I'll email you.
always programming.
I'm sorry, I should have prepped better. How do I pull up this document?
I might need, actually thinking about it, I think I need to allow you to share screen, which I've done. So it should be the green button that on the toolbar.
Yep.
And then you can just click on whichever is relevant.
Okay, Lawrence, there it is. And I'm gonna, Tim, if you're okay with it, I think I'll pass the baton to you and you can talk over the benefits and pitfalls of the various access points. This particular, I'll just talk over the image and then I'll shut up and let Tim take over. The established right-of-way, the town-owned right-of-way is that dark purple line on the bottom right there. That, just so you know, over the last couple of years, we worked to make sure that that easement is formally in place. So that is actually a formally recorded easement now. And the original idea with the church is that we would tap into the southernmost point of that, build a structure to go across the stream and wetland area, and then have a parking area at the corner of the Trinity Baptist Church. And from a whole bunch of reasons, it made a lot of sense, and it still does long term. Tim, I'll back off, and if you could walk us through.
Sure. Yeah. So, we had been looking at this Trinity access, like Nick was saying. I sort of revisited some of the areas over the last few days just to refresh. We had done a lot of research over the last few years, but hadn't been back there in a couple of years. And sort of after visiting a lot of these accesses, I sort of see why we liked the Trinity access. Starting up in the north with like the first access, we have listed up there possible access A. That is at the end of, I believe it's like Eastview Circle or Northfield Court, maybe Northview Court. And that basically is sort of like a homeowners association or condo type, but those are basically private roads that, seem to be only parking of that homeowners association. I'm not sure if that's the right term that is, but.
Tim, can you just zoom in a little bit so that because we're all looking at like the big screen.
Sure.
And Nick's in control of the map.
Yeah, and whoever's driving can maybe hover over the spots.
Yeah,
that Tim's
Lauren.
talking about.
There's one.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, access point A.
Yeah, so that's access A, and from looking on Google Earth or something, that looks like a really appealing spot. There's actually there's a parking lot at the end of that road that's like privately owned. I don't know if it's actually, something that GMP or Velco actually privately leases to someone, but there's it's almost like a storage parking area. So from looking from Google Earth, that I was like, oh, that could be, a parking lot, but definitely privately owned. So there would be, right of ways to gather. If you scroll, or if we get back in there and we are
While we're reloading it up, does anybody else remember Melinda walking around and like inspecting that parking lot and potentially even like talking to the neighborhood when we were first talking about acquiring Jacobs? I feel like there's a record of a conversation with that HOA somewhere.
Yeah, you're right, Kim, she did. We would have to look back into, the meeting summaries from whatever era that was to find out, remember, or Melinda could help us remember.
Might be able to search for the name of the road that is on or
Yeah.
something.
I think but anyway, yeah, that there is a history of conversation there, which I think the Valley Park District probably has as well.
So when that development was put in, there was no easement because Jacob Krantz wasn't even involved.
Oh,
Correct.
I believe, yeah, it seemed like there was a secured right of way at the end of the parcel, but not at, no parking access. So for the access B, which is a little south of that, is that's the end of like the Morgan Parkway Drive. So that area has that's where the septic pumping station is, or one of the town stations is there. Not a very well marked at the end of the road. I didn't really venture down to the septic area, just sort of took the right turn around Stirrup Circle. Certainly would need better signage, but I think we were gonna either ourselves or sort of talk with Simon about, reaching out to Public Works to see if there's any possibility for a couple trailhead parking spots down at the end of that road, or if that's, a non-starter, just due to Public Works, facilities and maintenance and what they need to do down there. Like you were saying, we probably could go back and review some of, the 2018, 2019 minutes. I know Melinda was pretty organized and may have, sort of touched base with other people at this point in time too. South of that, there's access C, and that there is a right of way in between those two parcels there. It looks like access C comes off the back of that person's yard there, but there is a town owned right of way that you can sort of see the mini sliver up above that number or to the left of 13 there.
Yep.
But no parking access, more pedestrian access. It does look like that is common land. I don't know if that's, when I clicked around on parcel ownership, it didn't really come up as a homeowners association. It had a single name attached to it, but that is another possibility. And then, so I guess these are all just things that would need more exploring, basically. Access D is at the end of Primrose Lane, which I guess at this point in time, there weren't any houses on Primrose Lane. Now I think there might be, 4 or 6 houses there, but it also has, like a bump out or a hammerhead sort of at the end of that road. That, is an interesting spot as well. If it were going to be, a lot of these spots like A through D there, none of them really look like they're going to have, a 6 to 8 car lot. They sort of more seem like they would be, smaller trailheads, and there would be, I guess, like a series of trailheads, almost like neighborhood related, could be one option. I guess that's sort of why the access from Trinity, which you could actually have, 10 cars, 8 cars all parked together, was really appealing as well. But and then south of that, you start to be out on, you're coming off of, what is it, the main road out there, Mountain View Road, a little bit more. If you are accessing by the solar panels or from the Trinity Baptist Church there, Global Foundries solar panel area is another person or business we could reach out to just to, fully investigate all the possible accesses and, see which ones are actually possibilities or non-starters to begin with, I would say.
Yeah, I haven't spoken to Tim since yesterday, but I did reach back out to gentleman at Global Founders. I haven't heard back from him. I hope he's the same contact I was talking to before. And also reached out to Green Mountain Power, and I'm going to reach out to Velco today. At the other end, at the north end, there's a couple of parcels. One is owned by Velco, one's owned by GMP. And so I'm reaching back out to these folks. What I left off with Global Foundries, they were looking to potentially sell their property, and you know, they were in that same conundrum as the church in that they didn't want to grant any formal access until they knew about the intentions of the new owner, but they had promised to get back in touch with us when they found a new owner to try to get that going. In many ways, that would be very similar to the Trinity Baptist access, although it's pretty significantly far back from the road where you'd pick up the trail, depending where we put the parking lot. So the short story, I didn't mean to cut you off, Tim, but we're leaning back into this, sort of going back to scratch. And once we get more information about what the potential is for Trinity Baptist to be able to go forward without shooting themselves in the foot from a development standpoint, once we find out more from Global Foundries, once we find out more from GMP and Velco, we'll have a lot more information about potential access. But I guess we did feel, and this goes back to the recreation management problem, we did feel pretty strongly that having a formal access with a parking area that doesn't have a negative impact on the neighbors long term, you know, if we don't achieve that now, you know, before we go into development, I just feel like it's my personal feeling, it would be kind of upside down, that we'd start creating these great trail networks and then people will come and start parking along the street on Morgan Parkway, and the neighbors will go, well, wait a minute. So,
Yeah, we don't want that.
yeah, we don't want that. So it's worth the effort. And you know, we haven't given up on the church, but I need to get more information to figure out what the possibilities are working with them. It may still be a situation we can work with them, and Tim is already thinking about ways to do sort of long-term temporary structures so that if things don't work out long-term, we could actually physically move what we build. So, and you know, he's the master at park development. Any thoughts or comments at this point, or updates?
I have a question about access E. That was the very, I guess, southern
Yes.
part.
Yep.
And would that be accessing it through the solar panel
Yes.
facility? Okay. So
Yep.
I see there's a parking lot off of Mountain View.
Correct.
And would that be available? Would that be the parking lot that's used, and then it's just kind of a formal walking path to access point E?
Potentially, it depends on a bunch of things. I don't know if we can scroll further down, or this is the bottom of the drawing. Okay. There is.
Simon's good at this. He'll get a map up.
Okay.
Because that map is pre-solar farm.
We were
There's
talking.
been a lot of development in there.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you for that. That's helpful. As you can see, yeah, you were mentioning that sort of bump out parking lot down the bottom. So the positive with that is it's close to the road and it's easier to manage. The negative with that is it's a long slog from getting out of your car to accessing the system. I guess my gut was telling me that if we're able to drive further in, sort of back to the back of the array, right by that edge row, that would seem like a logical location, but that's just looking at maps. That's not dealing with, you know, I'm not sure what the agricultural situation, what the access and security situation is.
Can you point with your cursor where?
Sure.
So the parking lot's there for the solar, and our easement runs along through the bittersweet parcel there.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I guess, you know,
That corner of the,
we'd have to establish the principle with Global Foundries.
Yes.
Are they okay? And then the next question is, do they want us to use this, or do they want us to develop our own thing?
Correct. And that sort of long rectangular property is privately owned. So,
they're fenced.
I think they
The
would
solar
be.
panels are fenced. Yeah.
so there's, you know, obviously there's the issue.
Yeah.
Oh, great. Yeah.
Depends on when they put
So
them in
the
there.
one near me
They
in
have to
Burlington
fence
is fenced
some.
off. And it's got high voltage signs all around it, so I assume something similar
Yeah.
applies here.
No. Don't stick your tongue to it.
Yeah.
That corner right where the cursor is, oh yeah, right there, that corner. I'm guessing just based on the fact that they've got kind of an intersection of roads and stuff, that corner might be suitable terrain for a parking area as well. And one of the things, So I have a couple thoughts. Is it good? Okay, time to share, Eric? Couple
Yes.
Yeah, go for
thoughts.
it.
Okay, so my priority right now, given the state of Trinity, would be to try to establish at least like an interim access plan. Because I think that even without a lot of improvements, there's significant demand for recreation. And of course, the risk there is anytime you do something that's temporary, it's kind of hard. It can be hard to undo once people get used to like driving somewhere and parking somewhere. It's kind of difficult to retrain people to, hey, stop doing that and start doing this new access point. But I feel like the timeline for a permanent access point that's to Tim's point can really accommodate like that 6, 8, 10 vehicles is probably a few years off at the soonest. And I feel like waiting until then to start working on basic improvements to the trails and kind of getting people in Williston used to the park. The idea of it being a park, I think that's longer than I would like to see us wait. So I'm in favor of taking some risks in terms of getting interim access set up. And I heard the comments about you don't want to go improving the trails and getting a ton of people visiting somewhere when you don't have good access established. At the same time, I feel like there's a lot of people in the area who have been using the trails.
Yes.
Who are locals.
Yep.
And would benefit from the trails being less muddy, better grading, whatever, some improvements over wet areas. So I think there's also a flip side to that coin, which is if you start doing some simple improvements, the locals are going to benefit right away because they're using the trails anyway. And they're just going to have a better experience, or maybe it's accessible to more people who are local there. So there's a lot of trade-offs, but I would like to see us do something to get folks able to access it.
Keep in mind that the ultra locals probably enjoy their access they have now.
Oh, yeah. Yes, like the folks who have a path out their backyard. I mean, that's different, but people who don't have a path out their backyard, but still live in those neighborhoods, I think could benefit.
Like some of the, there's certainly trail structures, like I was saying to Simon the other day, I have some pictures of trail structures that were out there in, 2018, 2019 that are, in pretty bad shape then, and they're probably just still the same, bridges and various structures out there now on a couple of the wet crossings. I guess making improvements within the Jacobs parcel and on the trails within the, defined lines there could be a good thing. Some of the things where, I guess, just like sort of getting from Trinity, there's like a wetland crossing. So there's some more boardwalk type building. But certainly I think, signage or, just some of those punch-in improvements that could be made from some of the, the more neighborhood. I mean, because they're all right of ways. So it seems as though, that's why they were developed like that or kept so that these, neighborhoods would have this access to get in there. So I do think, working on some of those repairs could be a good community builder, get people excited for the park as we search for a bigger, parking location.
Question about the bridge that was going to be built, if it's either from the Trinity or the solar panels, would that bridge still be in the same location to get across that wet area, or would those be different spots?
I think the solar panel setup might avoid, I don't know if I've walked in from that way, but I think that avoids some of the wetland crossing that comes with the Trinity access. I think that the Trinity access had more of a, you're going down into some phragmites and it needed some punch in, and then it had an actual little stream crossing.
The stream goes like this. So if you were entering over there, you'd be staying on the far side of that stream.
So you wouldn't be needing to build a bridge.
Yeah, you can see it there on the
Yeah.
bottom left, kind of near.
Oh, yes, I see it. So that would be.
There might be some drainage, but not the type of stream.
So Tim, I have a couple of other access questions for you. one, and I'll just rattle them off and you can respond however you want. So one is accessing, this would be a long haul from the access point, but from Redmond Road. I have no idea what Velco thinks of people of public trails underneath their power lines, but Redmond Road. And then there's the Velco access all the way up to the Jacob parcel. And then on the opposite end of the parcel, the north of Northview Court up.
Yeah, I was gonna ask about that.
So
one.
right there, that's that little loop that Simon's almost got his cursor on, that little, yeah.
That's
right
Velco.
there.
That's
That's
Velco.
also Velco.
Yes.
So that, I don't know what Velco is doing in there, but, or has going on there, I should say, but that
That's,
seems like a logical place too. If
Yes.
Velco
Yeah, I
was
feel
there.
like that one north of Northview Court there, that one is on our radar and Nick was gonna reach out about, because that has that little like turnaround and.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The
that'd be
loop
good.
road is great for access, yeah.
Yeah, that'd
And
be-
then that sort of stays, out of the neighborhoods there too, is nice, not, if people would park there and then everybody else would. And yeah, that does look like an interesting idea too, or possibility, the Redmond Road. Sort of what you can see from the map there, that the shot underneath the power lines there.
Yeah. The other thing I like about that option is I haven't looked at our trail connections map in a while, so I don't recall what exactly we have going on in that part of town, but if we were to set up a path or a trail from Redmond Road all the way over to all the way over to Jacob parcel and presumably connecting into like Northview Court and Morgan Drive or Eastview Circle and all that. That's a long connector across the north side of town, and we could eventually work to expand that trail network across the north side of the town. A third suggestion, and I'm fully acknowledging that this could be a lot of work, would be, or I guess it's more of a question, but what about just setting up multiple access points in each of those neighborhoods, so like two
Like
car
C.
parking lots or something
Yes.
across, A, B, and C, your A, B, and C options, and even a fourth one at the end of Honeysuckle Lane.
So you're trying to get everybody mad?
Yeah,
Well,
just
I
get
guess-
that whole part down, Matt, yeah. No, share the
Yeah, the bird.
pain.
Because I have a question about the easements. I guess I don't understand. So when they were given to the town, what was the expectation? I mean, what did the neighborhoods think they were giving that land for access? I mean, they obviously,
Yeah.
And as an outside
Yeah.
observer who used to be
It's-
involved with this many years ago, the town has done a spectacular job every time a development comes through of identifying potential connection points that match up with your open space plan. So these easements have been sitting there with potential for many moons. And it's one
but
reason,
not just for the neighborhoods.
it's part of,
Yeah.
Right.
we've got this open space plan since the late 80s that has all these, potential trail connections and this is a result of that. And so being able to tap into something like that is, I don't know, it warms my heart as a as a public servant that, we could actually, that's one reason that the Trinity Baptist, you're adding a significant chunk of trail. And it's a beautiful walk along the side of that field. It's
Yeah.
really spectacular. So,
It's the parking, not the walking, right? Like if there was already room to establish a pull-off for 4 cars in near one of these easements, it would be like, oh,
you're in.
great, you just do it. But because there's not, you're ending up with people parking on neighborhood streets,
Yeah.
and then you're pissing off locals, and then they just causes conflict. So it's the fact we don't have parking associated with one of those easements.
So I agree with Eric. I really like that Green Mountain Power Velco connection on the north side. I think that would make things a lot easier. We wouldn't have to bug any of the neighborhoods, and I don't know how amenable those companies would be to grant.
We've had really good luck
parking
with
lots
Velco.
and-
Yeah,
You have, okay.
Yeah.
yeah,
So that,
yeah.
I think
They,
that's a great shot.
out of Colchester Pond, they when they were redoing their main line that goes through Colchester Pond, they rebuilt an access road for us up to town spec, which they didn't
Oh,
have
wow.
to do. And they agreed to a combined access because a new development went in. There's a long way of saying that they put money and time and effort into assisting us. There's a woman named Allison who works there who I've sent her an email, but haven't heard back from her, but I'm going to reach out to her. So I actually feel pretty confident that they'll definitely listen to us and work with us, whether they can do, we don't know what their plans are for the future, whether there's an expansion of the substation. But I've always been intrigued by the relationship, the GMP owns the dam and the actual substation, and Velco owns the parcel that's adjacent to that. And I know they're all part of the same system, but I'm sure they all have their own security and development plans.
I also would be interested, Nick, in what benefit there could be for Velco. I don't know, like if the town was willing to plow the loop to keep it open in the winter time, or, there might be some way in which it benefits them. So I'd be interested to know, like, what could they potentially get out of a partnership?
Yes, and Tim made the very good point that the FERC licensing may be impacted as well, because as part of FERC licensing, you have to provide recreational access.
What's FERC?
So FERC is Federal Energy
Regulatory Commission.
Yeah, they do the dam licensing, so that hydro dam is.
Oh, that's cool. So they may kind of have to do that, or be
Maybe
happy to do it. Happier.
I think that parcel is a very strong contender for all of those reasons.
Yeah,
And
it's great.
Velco also has familiarity with Williston Rec because those lines go right through Catamount, and they had to navigate all of the recreational users of Catamount when they were rebuilding that line. So,
And they actually built that road up way more than they needed to, really. I mean, it's a highway.
Cool. So, all right, those sound like good options. Just some other questions that I had, kind of generic, I guess, is not really generic, but is there, so we talked about a lot about potential usage and how many parking spaces we would need. Is there some sort of a rough formula that can be used to estimate the number of people that might use a parking lot for access like that on any given day? Like if you factor in the number of people within whatever certain square miles or something of the parking lot and the number of other trails nearby and stuff like that, is there any way to guesstimate how heavily it might be used?
I think in our last parking lot, I forgot who, we did hire someone that sort of looked at our curb cut and had come up with some of that info for me. So not a plan or I don't have the formula myself, but
well, it's kind of similar to like Mud Pond Conservation Area in that it's not a lot of elevation gain. There's sort of like a loop type shape to what would be there. You might be able to compare it to other parks that are similar or other
Right, and so we know that
trails.
Mud Pond doesn't have enough parking.
Yeah,
That's
right,
why
yeah.
I'm asking the question.
Yeah, some of that is, there's people parking there to go to the country park and to the conservation area.
The mountain.
So if you thought about just the conservation area, maybe so that we might do a better job comparing than trying to
I sort of
calculate.
feel like when this comes forward, this is going to be on the Suckerbrook end of popularity. In
Yeah,
terms
I
of
like that too.
a country
Super
There's a
park.
lot of people at that end of town, and there's no walking natural walking
So I
areas.
think we need like a decent size area to park in. So just on that, like, are we saying, I just want to make sure I'm clear on what the actions are. So we're going to look into like these three access possibilities. So Velco, Trinity and Global Foundries. I think they're preferable to the amount of work it would take to get 2 spaces on Morgan Parkway. So Nick, I also looked into your question about Trinity and whether they prejudice their future development potential. And the answer is sort of no, they wouldn't. So if they were to give us a temporary right of access or use of a parking lot on that, growth management as it currently stands is based on giving us permanent rights to that. so they would still be able to score points on the current system.
That's
What we
great.
wouldn't be able to do, yeah, what we wouldn't be able to do is give them any sort of assurance that that is the case. I don't know if that makes sense. So we can't say,
You can't guarantee points.
well, we can't guarantee you points, and we also can't guarantee what the regulations are going to be in 5 years' time.
Yeah.
So it really, to my mind, that puts the risk on us of developing this, and then they can withdraw that at any point really. But we'll have that problem with Global Foundries, and we'll have that problem with Velco.
Yeah.
That's great news. And where we left off before they started doing the development was excuse me, just shutting a door. There's an existing parking area that serves the athletic fields on which they were going to put the housing development. And the original concept is we would put up signage and share that parking lot and put signage for the trail going across the back of their fields to a point where we could cross the stream. So that is not a extremely high cost endeavor to get there. We wouldn't have to build a new parking lot. That's where we left off. And our attorney had done some work with you guys on codifying the existing town easement. We're basically going to match that language as best we can as we went across the Trinity Baptist property. And we had started brainstorming, would it be an annual lease that would just, keep reconstituting itself each year, or would it be more of a, we're just getting to that level of detail when they came up with the idea for the development, and the whole conversation changed. So we had a pretty good basis when we left off with the church. And now I'll reach back out to them. But I think, the lesson of this is, we got to equally so, we're going to be talking to Global Foundries, and, the Velco thing really does intrigue me in terms of being a good potential access, especially if the church is not sure. We find ourselves 5-6 years from now and they're like, well, actually, so, because leadership does change and concepts do change. So I do get nervous about temporary things serving public assets. So I think it makes sense for us to continue to push, for the other access points. And as Simon made a great point, I think Morgan Parkway, even if Public Works is okay with that, that would be a pretty significant impact on the neighborhood of, 8 or 10
I
cars.
just think, I'm going to have Tim on speed dial dealing with complaints on like a Saturday about people parking on the road. It's just going to be unmanageable.
Yeah.
For that reason, Simon, I kind of like the the DOE parking lot next to the solar fields too, because it looks pretty large, and it's also off of Mountain View, and nobody's going to park on Mountain View. I just don't know if DOE would. Is that even available? Like, can you drive down that road right now and park in that lot?
I think it's private property, but like we just need to. I think Nick mentioned that he'd spoken to them a few years ago.
Yes.
And they'd said, well, we're reassessing our need for this facility or something, or selling it. So we just need to get back in touch and see if they're willing to be good citizens and help us out.
I want to offer a couple things. I'm going to do some follow-up, and I think what would be useful is either we come back to you guys in a couple of months, or I send you a summary of what we've achieved, because I'm about to be a lot of information is going to start flying over the next couple of weeks, and I'd love to keep you guys updated. So in writing and/or in person or over Zoom, I'd love to follow up on this. 2 other thoughts. One is I'd love to another community walk would be wonderful. We did one 3 years ago, and sort of rebooting this whole project in the mindset of people who live there would be a good thing, because they're the ones going to be impacted. So I'd love to do another community walk in the spring. And then the third piece is just, you asked how many cars we park. Tim's answer, he actually has very good intuition on this stuff. But what we do also struggle with, a good example is Colchester Pond, is, if we expand the parking lot, it's like if you build it, will they come? Are you putting more? And then this is like, I'm glad we have a recreation professional on this call, like Kim Coleman. It's another recreation problem. Are you creating more problems by increasing the ability to park there? or are you, you know, it's a management issue. So the carrying capacity of the property is not something that we have put any consulting time into. And I guess the question will be, you know, because there are 3 major neighborhoods, I mean, this thing is perfectly sited for use for already developed and soon to be developed areas. I guess the question for this group is, as we get closer to doing something that upgrades this park as a broader community asset, do we need to do more work in terms of understanding the site and the carrying capacity?
Yeah.
And you know, we could start building parking lots, and all of a sudden you've got 25 cars trying to park in a 10-car lot. You know, like
Right.
you know, we had that problem in Colchester, and we thought about expanding the parking lot, and my ears are still ringing from the neighbors saying, well, if you build a larger lot, then it's just going to fill up and it's going to be more people, you know.
Yeah.
I
I
feel
kinda
like some
like the
places,
idea.
like some places use is driven by, you know, certain features there, whereas, you know, Colchester Pond on a beautiful day is beautiful, but also like, you know, ice fishing and regular fishing are really popular there. Whereas compared to, you know, like Mud Pond, I know you guys were mentioning, I mean, I think it's largely driven by mountain biking, which is, you know, when I go there, that's generally, you know, who's filling up the lot most. Whereas an area like this, which I guess hasn't really been discussed if mountain biking would be there. Although it seems like with such a small network of trails and stuff, it would be hard to accomplish there. But, you know, it just seems like it would be on a lower use, some of the busier uses.
So I'd like the idea of having multiple access points, and,
Yes.
and especially if one's gonna be Trinity. Because my thought is that when and if they get around to developing it, there's gonna be a point in time where they're gonna have to close that because of construction, and, you know, they just can't have construction vehicles and people using that same road, so
Yeah,
really.
even if that is the temporary access, eventually there's gonna be disturbance one way or another.
Well, and then another reason I was suggesting multiple access points was not actually necessarily for each of those neighborhoods, but it spreads out the use across the park too. If you, especially if you have one on either end of it, then you don't have everyone starting at the same point and wearing all the trails down that side of the park.
Yes.
And I think, you know, just zooming out, big picture, I'm looking at Google Maps for, you know, the larger area. You know, we've got not just those 3 neighborhoods right there, but you know, the south side of Five Corners and Essex Junction, there's a lot of people in there that don't really have access to public trails, and you know, other parts of Williston, and so it just seems like there's a potential, even if we don't have enough, even if we try to constrain it with the number of parking spots, there's still a potential for a lot of demand for use in a park in this area.
So, I mean, I guess we'll schedule some sort of public event and walk for the spring. My other question on this was going to be whether there's anything else we can do as we're figuring out the access to try and make sure we're getting the ball rolling. We're not going from a standing start once we've got it. I don't know as much about designing parks as you, Tim, but is it worthwhile starting to look at the trail network and figuring out what we need to do and what the budget is? You know, how we future-proof, like, you know, different accesses might be needed at different times, that sort of thing, so we can start establishing if we've got any issues that we need to think about in, you know, formally laying out these trails.
Yeah, I mean, I think as the snow melts and the mud goes away, we could, you know, start working on getting a little bit of an inventory done out there, or revisiting, you know, the access points and seeing what areas would need improvements. And just seeing if there's anything that's, you know, a red flag for like safety issues right now that, you know, would be moved up to the top of the list if it's just a matter of, you know, I'm sure there's some quick trail work projects out there that could really benefit things. So I guess as we get into the early season, maybe looking at a few of those to do.
So we have about 5 to 8 minutes left or so. Is there anything else on the Jacob parcel you want to talk about? And then beyond that, are there other Winooski Valley Park District updates you wanted to share with us?
This is really the main focus for us and you guys is Jacob. And you know, we're highly motivated to look at all the access points. And I'm going to take away two terms. One is future proof. Thank you, Simon.
I like that one.
And
Okay.
the other one was, what is it? Uber neighbors or ultra neighbors or something, the people who live.
Ultra local.
Ultra local, yes.
Ultra local,
I just want to thank you for adding to my language. I really actually, I knew exactly what you were talking about. It's like, yeah, it's right there. But all kidding aside, just, in general, we're just extremely grateful to the town of Williston, and we've had quite a journey over the last few years, and we're really excited about this park and feel a little bit red in the face that it's been a couple of years, but we really had to wait to see how Trinity rolled out. And now that it's not going to roll out in a way that we think, and now that we know that Trinity could potentially provide us a temporary access, we're going to jump all over this thing over the next few weeks, and looking forward to following up with you guys. And but the community walk that we held was extremely helpful at a bunch of levels. So love to schedule a walk with you guys and invite people from the community sometime in the spring to get people connected with that parcel, because that's where you really learn things about how, and you learn the history of the site. Because the history of the site informs how you're gonna manage it, because people have been using that site as part of their own sort of huge backyards for generations. So that's another thing, is we want to connect with people who know the property. The other thing is just it's really ecologically, we've done a natural resource inventory. There was a phase 1 environmental that was done when you folks acquired it. So just from a due diligence standpoint, we're in good shape. We're not going to find any mystery tanks or significant contamination. It's an interesting site because you're right across the river from a large industrial complex. And the Winooski River, the water quality. I mean, you could go on and on with it, but it's a really fascinating site, and it's got a small stream that releases up in the northern end of it. And it's got some really nice elevations. And just more broadly speaking, as you were saying, as you sort of zoom out on Google, the potential down the road for other connections, largely dependent on who purchases the Global Foundries property. There's some really just unbelievable potential here that also would be well served by having a well-planned access. Because I just feel like with that large parcel, and they were trying to sell it to a single owner. They had zoning kind of prevents it anyhow, but there was no talk about, hacking it up into large parcels. So I just think there's some potential down the road, if we do things right up front, that we might be serving an even larger trail network. I highly encourage you guys to check it out. It's really quite striking, the property.
Cool. All right. Thank you. That was a great conversation. And we'll definitely get you on the schedule in the next month or so. I'll let you connect with Simon when you've got some more information to share.
Sounds good. And Tim and Lauren, thanks for coming.
Yes, thank everyone.
Thank you. Good to see y'all.
Thanks,
Yep, good to see you guys.
Take care.
Have a good one.
All right. Let's see some promising options coming out of that.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
I'm glad you brought, I was thinking about that. I said, what about that road? I think that sounds really fun.
Yeah.
Could be minimal impact. Nobody's gonna complain about that like they would
I wouldn't think so.
enhancing another
Yeah.
access point.
I mean, really, the only downside I could see of that is just the traffic jams that already happen at commuter hours that time.
Coming out of there going left, it's like, whoa.
But you can't, you can't.
People
Beggars
learn.
can't be choosers, right?
People will learn. All right, go for like a ticket parcel at 4 o'clock on a weekday.
Yeah.
But I also think that having a connection in the south too, I think both of
Yeah.
them would be awesome. And I think we should be careful to also improve those neighborhood accesses a little bit, just so the neighborhoods feel good
Stabilize
about
it and
their,
welcome
we
them. recognize
recognize it, but we're not enhancing it. We're just making it easier for them to.
Yeah, I was thinking that too, something like what we have. What's the neighborhood? It's right off of North Wilson Road. Carl's neighborhood.
Yes.
Jeez. Chelsea College.
The one on the left or it's.
No.
Yeah, well, anyway, there's a
What creek
like a
side?
side cut off of the Allenbrook
Further
Loop,
down.
and it takes you over into that neighborhood. And just a little sign that says south entrance to Allenbrook Loop. That's it.
Oh,
Like,
yeah,
you would
yeah.
never, and it's behind like a
Oh,
set of cedars
Yeah.
as you pull in,
Yeah.
you know, as you're walking in.
I do think that's a
Better
way,
I've been back in there.
a way
Yeah.
to, it reduces
Michael
the
Lane.
impact. It's Michael Lane, yeah. There's a name for that
Oh,
homeowner's,
that's where Carl lives.
right,
Yeah.
yeah, his neighborhood.
And
So it does a few things, I think. I think it shows good faith to the ultra locals who are like, well, wait a minute, this was our thing, and now it's everybody's thing. They need to see benefit too. It hopefully reduces the impact to that access, because, you know, folks who just are using it for walking, they don't necessarily think about, well, where's there gonna be the most erosion or
Right.
things like that. So I think it does a variety of benefits to work with them on improving their access, even if it's not for the public.
Exactly.
Not to mention, they might feel uncomfortable walking through their neighbor's backyard in order to get to it. I mean,
Right.
Yeah,
there would definitely be some benefit to making real and designated access.
you don't have to be friends with the person who has the impromptu trail or whatever.
Hi, hey,
Critters trail.
your steaks smell good on your grill tonight.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, next up, we have habitat disturbance assessments. So this is a follow-up from our conversation last time, is that correct? No.
Yes,
Yes.
some draft language to be a talking piece around how we could actually implement this.
Okay.
So we looked at it, and I think that last time we talked about the town contracting the HDA preparation and how it would work and when it would be done. I think we talked about when to do it, and I think we landed on, at this stage, we'd be talking about prior to discretionary permit. Given that
After pre-app.
after pre-app, because pre-app's pretty speculative, lightweight review, but as we do with all pre-apps, we inform them about the constraints, and then the Conservation Commission like says, we want you to avoid these areas and direct development here. And then they know that the HDA is going to be conducted by someone contracted to the town.
We could have like
rather
some
than
stock language even that we put into our
Yeah.
findings and recommendations that says, you know, based, kind of like we do today, based on the mapped SWHA, et cetera.
Yeah.
You know, these are areas that you're expected to design to stay out of. An HDA will be required, a discretionary permit to confirm, you know,
Yeah.
any impacts or things like that. It's not so much like a telling off as much as it's just like full transparency that we expect you to stay out of these things, and we're going to be measuring it in some way.
Yeah. So this was just to, so this is the chapter 27 as it relates to the significant wildlife habitat areas. The area, without touching too much of this, we still have the documentation of no undue adverse effect, which is what they need to provide in order to do any development in those areas.
Yep.
So the review procedures, it's quite a short update. It's just to change it so that we insert the word contracted there by the town prior to discretionary permit or administrative permit review. We've kept, you know, I don't think I've never ever come across us requiring an AP for an HDA for an AP, because generally they're all this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
No one's
Sheds or
no one's building a, you know,
Develop.
detached, you know, an accessory garage like 300 feet away from their property. So some language about who pays for it, which is the applicant pays for it and they provide us a fee.
I like that you just said the fees would be listed on the website, because that way you don't have to list a fee or list the fee structure.
Well,
part
as
of the
I looked at
bylaws.
this, the state law is that the fees have to be set by the select board, which is what we do for our permit fees and our impact. Our permit fees at least. So they develop the fee schedule.
So,
I
but
think-
there can be a contract with existing.
So I think what we probably do
biologists.
is maybe structure it the way Public Works do, which is we say it's going to cost you some sort of bracket depending on the size of the site, and then say additional fees may be necessary. And that way it can be updated by the select board as we go through. And then some text about when the HDA has to be done, which is just going to bring up a slightly better copy of that so it's easier for everyone to see. Yeah, I don't know what I've said that, but
The PDF previewer is a little bit hard sometimes to
yeah,
zoom
so
in.
basically it's similar to what it was previously, which is that when does it have to be done? It has to be done, your application for the discretionary permit is not considered complete until we have that HDA, so we won't schedule the DRB review and the clock doesn't start ticking until we have that piece of information. And then there's, starting here, so there's a bit of sort of warning. So applications for discretionary permit should remember to factor this into their development program. So just don't wait, don't submit your.
Wait till the last minute.
Don't submit it and then go, here's the money to the HDA, because you might not like what they find. So that gives them impetus to come to us and say, you know, we're developing our site plan, can we at least get the baseline assessment done? You know, they may want to take their own.
And if they're really concerned about, if they could do it even earlier, I mean, they could do it at pre-app if they want to, it just has to be done prior to discretionary, right?
Yeah, and I think this sort of gives them the option if they, you know, they might take their own advice as well as paying for us. To sort of inform, because I can imagine they probably want some ecological advice about, you know, someone to go to their design team meetings and things like that, which we're not going to do, and our biologist is not going to do.
Yeah.
But they may, you know, they may say, well, we've got this issue, can we come and see the Conservation Commission before we file to talk it through? Yeah. Okay.
Simon, is there a way that to put into these bylaws something like a recommendation or, you know, encouragement to conduct this before pre-app?
Sorry. So in general, so the regulations work best when we're explicit about what's required and when and what people have to do. Anytime we start getting into we're suggesting or applicants should or things like that.
This is the process,
so
this is when you do it.
It becomes difficult to administer because people say, when do I have to do it? And we say, well, we prefer if you did it now, but you don't have to. And not that on other circumstances, I know that the DRB likes to have clarity because they do see themselves as administering and making all their decisions consistent with the bylaw. And I think introducing recommendations might be problematic. And I think this sort of suggestion, you know, like a warning, I think does that. So maybe I could think about how we could phrase that. You know, applicants are encouraged to reach out to the Conservation Commission with any questions, but I'd have to think that through, I think.
Yeah, I was gonna ask whether it's advisable to put anything in, like you have the option of doing the HDA at the first stage, not the administrative permit, what's the first application?
The pre-app.
Pre-app,
Yeah.
at the pre-app stage, you have the option of choosing to do that. You pay the same fee, you could just do it earlier. If it helps with your planning, you know, for some of the smaller applicants, I know we were talking about, there's the big fish who are doing big developments, and then there's, you know, folks who are just trying to subdivide their property. For the smaller fish, they might benefit from doing it earlier. Yes, it costs money, but they may not be as comfortable going out and procuring those services themselves. And they also might have a little bit less experience to just eyeball the property and know what might be a challenge.
I was thinking that too, Reed, and maybe just a clean way to say it would be something like the HDA may be done at any time, but must be submitted by whatever you have.
Be completed by.
Yeah, but if we're gonna say something like that, then I think we need to also give it a window. Like it needs to be done, it can't be done, have been done 15 years ago.
Yeah,
You know?
So true.
It needs to have been done within X number of
That's a
months
good
or
point.
whatever, from when they submit at least a pre-app.
Today, do we require them to redo their HTA if it's been a certain number of years since they did a pre-app? Like if they do a pre-app today, but then they table it for 5 years and then they come back.
So we take the HDA and we assess it at the point of discretionary permit. So once that assessment has been made, we're essentially saying we're okay with you having these impacts on the strategic wildlife habitat area. So if they come back and they, I don't know, say want to revise their development plan, their site plan, and suddenly we've got a whole load of new development in the SWHA, we probably look at how old that.
Yeah, or
Habitat
the
assessment
town
is.
guidelines may have changed in that
Right.
5-year period
Yeah.
too, so we might relook at it with different.
Yeah. But there is a certain amount of like, someone comes back in and their traffic assessment is 3 years old. We probably wouldn't make them redo that because it probably hasn't changed, significantly in that time.
So maybe it's more of a staff thing.
Yeah.
You're saying that like staff, when people reapproach the town, could make those types of recommendations like, hey, your HDA is kind of old. You might want to consider updating it because it's from 8 years ago when you were thinking about doing this
Yeah.
project and now you're
Yeah.
finally doing it.
And all that work that we did with Jens and kind of redid that math, I mean, that might be a good point to say from this point, on. I mean, if it was 5 years ago, it's changed a bit.
That is possible.
Yeah,
The new SWHA mapping hasn't been adopted because that goes through with the town plan, is that right?
Yeah, I think that's what I found. We have to amend them.
It's been drafted but not adopted, so we can use it for our education, but it's not what's being overlaid when we see, right, at pre-app,
Yeah.
when you show that, like, here's the property and here's how the SWHA overlaps, it's off of the old one until the new town plan kind of,
and that's
It's
2
official.
years, 2 years away now.
yeah, like 1 to 2 years.
And just on the pre-app as well, people do have a time limit to file on their pre-apps.
Okay,
So once they receive their notice of decision from the DRB, they then have, for non-residential, a year to file their DP, otherwise they have to start again with pre-app. And for residential, they have a year to file from growth management if they're successful.
okay. All right. So that probably covers it between staff advice and that's
So,
the
you know,
limitations.
Say someone was really good and did their HDA or pre-app, you would have the opportunity to, if it lies dormant for 3 years and they come back, they would have to go through pre-app again. At which point you'd have the opportunity to look at
See how current it is.
and just,
Yeah,
it's
what
probable.
else has changed around them during that?
Yeah, so it's probable in 2 years, has anything realistically changed on that parcel?
Yeah, it's
Okay.
minimal changes.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I like how simple the change looks.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it's basically 2 FAQ sections since our bylaws are written in FAQ style, which I like.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's unusual that.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen it before, but I think it does speak to making it accessible as opposed to just a bunch of jargon. You have to like decipher, well, what question are they trying to answer here?
Yeah.
I guess one question I had, so I see that you changed 27.5.7 to 4, was that 0.2? Was there anything that was deleted from that review?
No, that was just because I put
Just
in
the
these
additions.
additional paragraphs.
Cool, all right. All right, anything else on this? Do you have what you need from us on that? section? Okay. Great. that was.
Thank you for writing it up.
That was a
Yeah.
lot easier than I thought it was gonna be.
Yeah.
All right, excellent. Next, and we're a couple minutes ahead of schedule, ERF outreach update. It's you, right, Reed?
Oh, yes. Yeah, and Simon, are you able to pull up the Google Slides? Do you have the link, or can I send it to you real quick?
Yeah, I'll probably have it. I deal with too many reads.
I
Yeah,
saw your
yeah, not
letter
on
to
Zoom,
the
but
editor.
we'll get,
So that was good. I mean, at least they published it, right?
They did publish it.
They published it.
Couple of questions, one question back from now, I forget what it was now, nothing major, but.
Yeah, would you like to send me it?
Yeah.
I'm not finding it.
I have to
Yeah.
step away for a minute. I'll be right back.
Thanks, Cam. Send it to you. There you go, share. I want to just create shareable link and send it to you. Anyone with a link, here we go, copy link. I'll kick that over to your email, son. So while I get this to Simon to put up on the screen, because I do think there's a couple things that'd be interesting to see.
You can share it if you want, Reed. I think you're allowed to share. The security settings are set for DRB.
Okay, yeah.
You don't get as many Zoom bombers.
It's good bombers, I love that. That's funny. All right. Let me open up Zoom then and put this ID in. I had kind of an organizational brainstorming meeting with the folks who've been recommended from Vermont Land Trust, Trust for Public Land, and
That
Jens.
hasn't really well.
Mhm.
Just seems to be a blank email.
Oh, that's good. Well, that's okay.
I
I'm
mean,
gonna pull it
you
up
should be
here.
able to just share.
Yeah. Let me make sure my audio is not on, because that will give us a lot of feedback here. It says waiting to be admitted.
There you go. Sorry, you're not in the meeting, right?
Yeah, I hadn't joined yet. So, all right. And I think it was pretty good. I didn't think that I have as good a gauge on how the land trusts operate. Like, I'm still learning what they do and how they do what they do. So I was trying to figure out how they would tie into this event. And in the end, I think that they potentially have a lot of good ideas for us about how to engage with the public around land conservation. And they certainly have perspective about what different towns do, since they have to partner with so many different towns. So one of their points was, I mean, I know you're trying to improve the conservation situation in Williston, but you should also maybe consider the fact that there's a lot of successes in Williston. You guys are actually in pretty good shape compared to a lot of towns, especially in terms of the way that your town zoning is and stuff like that. It's set up to have a chance of success, and a lot of towns don't even have that. So I thought that was interesting. That was, yeah, it was encouraging, you know.
Yeah.
Let me pull up. So I took notes. And I'll make this bigger. Slideshow. So I took some notes talking with them. So this is what I walked through with them, and then I enhanced it with their feedback. So basically, I wanted to make the case for why we're doing this event. So I just tried to highlight some of the environment that we are in that led to the idea that, hey, we need to do some public outreach about the ERF. So challenges with funding, that kind of mismatch between the understanding of how development happens in Williston versus the understanding of how conservation happens in Williston, and also the visibility of development versus the visibility of conservation. So all of those things that everybody on this Commission, of course, is aware of. So then what do we do about that? So Sustainable Williston wants to support conservation in Williston, and so helping to host an event is one way to do that. And the Conservation Commission we're the primary body that can make conservation from a town perspective happen. So by partnering, we could do a community style event. And then I put these A through D. These came out of the conversation with those folks based on their recommendations of how we could make a single event as opposed to like a 3 or 4 part series. How do we condense it down? How do we make it impactful so that when people leave, they want to do something and they know what to do, as opposed to just coming and learning a bunch and then just leaving, and there's no change really as a result. So and Jens kind of took the lead on making some suggestions based on what he's seen in outreach events before. He said that he really felt like we should make the emphasis around celebration of what we have in Williston and what we have conserved, and then a pathway toward maybe meeting some of the next goals that we want to go after, as opposed to it being a little bit more negative around like, well, we can't get enough funding for the ERF, and we've got all this development happening and people are pissed off. Like, that's not where we want people to go. We want to go toward, all right, let's take pride in what we've done and let's talk about what we can do to go further. So breaking it down into like a celebration of Williston's conserved open spaces to kick off the event, which could take the form of like a little virtual tour, perhaps saying like, let's visit virtually on the screen some of these places that have been conserved and the value that they have brought to Williston. Then talking about how we do our prioritization, because I think very few people are aware that there's even a prioritization map, let alone how we prioritize. So I think that would be really engaging, and maps. I think people really get excited about maps versus text. So taking a look at the map, talking about, kind of the patterns around, well, why is it that you see a lot of high priority parcels in, kind of the northeast down through south of the highway? Well, it's because you've got your larger parcels, you've got more of that forest cover. Like, let's talk about some of the things that went into the prioritization. Then C, talking about pathways to conservation. So that's the point, to introduce the ERF and how it's funded, and also talk about how we do partnerships like with land trusts to extend our dollars so that we don't have to raise all the money as a town. And then a call to action, which would be, hey, there's opportunities in Williston because we have this good environment with our growth management, with the ERF existing and so on. We just need to kind of lean in and leverage it to get where we want to go in terms of the next town plan revision, the next fiscal year budget for it, and so on. And the one piece of this doesn't really cover is what individual homeowners can do. And I think that's a separate event, like not what's the town do to conserve land, but what can I do to conserve my lands and maintain good habitat, things like that. So that didn't quite fit within a single event.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It's like the woman who came to our meeting the other
Yes.
day and wanted to, her parents.
And she's in the middle, right? She's like at the point of deciding, well, do we do something ourselves to try to conserve the land? Or do we do something with the town to try to, maybe sell some of the land or grant some of the land, or work together on creating conservation easement for the land, or what do we do? And then the desired outcomes are people leave feeling proud of Williston's conserved spaces. They understand both the challenges and opportunities that Williston has, and the desire to support conservation goals. Like, that would be the three things that we'd hope to get out of this.
It seems like some of those things that you mentioned at the beginning, like we need to be sure to get funding for ERF, all that stuff kind of just automatically follows all this celebration, in my opinion. It's like,
Let's build
hopefully
on it.
people, they're gonna come out and say, yes, we need to do that. How do we make sure it happens? And then you just say, well, we gotta be sure that we get funding.
Yeah, you only really need like 5 minutes to talk about
Right.
that, to say, well, I hope everybody's kind of on board with this. Okay, we've done really well. Let's
Yeah.
keep that
If we wanna
going.
continue,
You wanna
this has to
continue,
happen,
right.
yeah.
We want to continue. pay attention to opportunities to influence the town plan, because that's gonna be getting revised, and there's gonna be some sort of public outreach around that process. And pay attention because the budget cycle happens sooner than you think. In December, you need to start paying attention because that's when the budget's being developed. And then in January, it's being discussed by the select board, and then it goes into effect July through June. So you have to really get ahead of it, and it's too late to think in like March, oh, we're gonna influence whether we're funding a ERF well. That's after the fact. So getting folks aware of that.
So would you do a Zoom, set up a Zoom?
So this would, I'm imagining that we have an in-person location and an option to Zoom in.
Okay.
It could be something like the police station meeting room, so that it's pretty big. People
We
can.
probably need to rethink that.
Good.
I understand the community justice centre might be moving into that meeting
Okay.
room, in which case it's not going to be available anymore.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's just an example, I guess, of the style room. I want something big enough that people can really come to an in-person event, but I do want to offer it over Zoom because I know there's lots of people who aren't comfortable being in.
I mean, if we could still go
Space.
upstairs and.
Yeah,
the
that's
side
it.
there, right?
Yeah,
Make it
or
more room,
Yeah.
I'm not very familiar with the library, but
go library.
see if they, I mean, I imagine they have some sort of room over there.
Yeah, it's a little bit
It's
smaller.
small.
It's a nice community room, but it's
Yeah.
appropriate for like the 12 people, not the
Yeah.
24 people. So
Well,
And
the
it- is
the
it as
room way
big
in
as
the
this
back
room?
is big. No, yeah, the room in the back.
it's a little bit
Yeah, I
bigger.
know which one.
Yeah, it's a little bit bigger than this space, which is more like a 10-person or an 8-person kind of comfort. So we'll have to find the right space, but I want something big enough where people can actually come in person and be in the room together with a nice big screen and a speaker. But then I want to have the Zoom option for other folks.
Is the fire station? I've never been in that room.
Yes, that room is a good size.
Good
Yep.
size.
What about,
Parking.
thinking beyond the town or community spaces? I'm thinking like, whatever it is that's down at Pine Ridge now that has conserved land, right?
The nets.
Nets,
Yeah,
yeah.
nets- net
Like,
center.
I'm thinking about like, I like that one idea option because it's got conserved land
Yeah.
right there.
Yep.
People can see in the conversation, they can see the benefit of.
So that
conserved
you're
land.
on
Well, even
parcel.
other pieces of the stuff, it would
Right.
right there, there's Catamount, I mean, it's
Yeah.
kind of a nice place to say, see,
Yeah.
this is what happens when you.
Yeah.
When you pay attention to it.
Yep, we could certainly ask.
I agree, I mean, I think it's nice to include not only public sites, but.
Yeah,
Or it might be hard to do a Zoom, but Isham Barn or something like that.
sure. Yeah, so other spaces that are
Yeah.
non-traditional, sure, absolutely. We can talk about coming up with a couple options to
Yeah,
host it.
they have parking.
The owl type functionality is really helpful, so that's one of the benefits to the spaces that are set up for that, but we can find ways to do it. Just a reminder of who was recommended again, Kate from TPL, and then Bob, oops, I should say Heiser, and not Hyder. He's a hider. So in terms of like what their role would be to partner with us, it seems like it would probably be more as like folk there to help answer Q&A.
Yeah.
That it would be more like me, and maybe I could rope Simon into helping present some of the topics that are a little bit more like town planning oriented, such as like the ERF. Of course, I could speak about it, but I think it's really useful to introduce faces. So I would love for people to recognize, to come out of this also knowing like, oh, hey, we have a conservation planner, and this is what they do.
Yeah.
So I think it's good to spread the love in terms of speaking, and the partners, I think, would be very comfortable just being there to be like Q&A assistants, and maybe introduce themselves and some way in which they have been related to Williston. So, Kate could talk about being part of the Catamount work. Jens could talk about just introduce himself and say, I've been working with the Conservation Commission to develop the SWHA revisions. So it helps them understand that there are other partners out there that we're working with. They don't necessarily have to be presenters for the event. And then I think that pretty much is it. I've started collecting like, what does our current town plan say? So I got a bunch of slides where I was just doing research on like, what does it say about the vision for conservation in Williston? And I think the ask that I have for for us as a conservation commission is really around our memo to the select board was a bit of a statement about what we think the direction for conservation in Williston should be. And the next step is really making that happen as part of the town plan revision. So if we want to do something like target a 30 by 30, if we want to really set some targets, as opposed to just saying we value conserving land and then whatever happens, happens from there. I think it would be helpful to have kind of a direction from the Conservation Commission about what do we envision, what are we advocating for, and what's kind of how do we get there. We don't have enough time. It was kind of the consensus for the group. We don't have enough time to actually talk about some of these things. We might be able to introduce the concept, but we can't really dig into, for instance, the fact that getting to something like 50% of land conserved by 2050 is not going to be achieved through the traditional process, because there's just too much private land that's not going to come up for conservation over that time horizon. There's going to need to be efforts with private landowners to conserve parts of their land without them selling or without them donating that land to the town. So it's not just public land, it's going to need to be also conservation of private land to achieve something like that. So we don't really have time in the event, I don't think, to get into that, but having whether it's just reinforcing what we put in the memo to the select board, or whether it's kind of massaging it a little bit and presenting, this is kind of how the Conservation Commission is envisioning we are going to, the direction we're going to go for conservation in town. I think that would be really helpful to be able to present as part of it, our philosophy, if you will. So that was a lot of information, but I just wanted to bring everybody up to speed on the planning that I've been doing, the feedback that I got from our partners, and the fact that we think we've got an agenda down that A through E that was on that earlier slide, or A through D. This is what we would try to accomplish. This is what we would present during this session.
That sounds good to me. That's a lot of work to put into this. Thanks, Reed.
Yeah.
I missed it, I think, or maybe you can say the time frame.
Yeah, so I think in my mind, this is a late summer type activity. And the reason is that I want to time it so that pretty soon after the event, there are town plan public engagement opportunities, and the fiscal year 2025 stuff isn't too far off. Like if we did it in the spring, we're already almost in the spring. If we did it in the next 3 months, it would just be, I feel like, wildly too early in terms of having actionable next steps. For people would be saying, look for an announcement of public hearings or opportunities for input on the town plan. And so I'm looking at you a little bit, Simon, if you have any gauge on when you think those are going to get planned. We should kind of be like a month or two ahead.
Give a date. If you're interested, here's
Exactly
the next step.
Here's 1, 2, or 3 dates that you could show up and make a difference, which could include writing a letter between Thanksgiving and the new year to the select board about what you'd like to see for conservation, ERF budgeting. It could include town plan, public hearings, or things like that.
Yeah,
So,
Maybe
look into that.
a little before Thanksgiving, because I know people just get holidays. just
Yes,
get
holidays get
crazy.
crazy.
Once
Yeah,
that happens,
yeah.
people are
Too
like,
busy to do stuff.
yeah.
That sounds like a great plan. I think it'd be good to put together a timeline for all of that.
Yeah.
Right on through town meeting day or whatever next year, but this might be ambitious. I throw it out there anyway. But I think this is all great. And I just, an add-on to it might be if we could get a grant, probably not just straight up funding from the town, but a grant from somebody to pay for an actual marketing program to run like next fall, this fall, maybe, maybe this fall's too soon, but whatever, in the fall. Somebody could put together some videos of drone footage of the parks and maybe like some infographics. Exactly. Yeah, some infographics or something with some basic statistics. Here's what your conserved lands do for you in Williston. Here's why we need to continue to invest in conserving lands. And one other,
Now's the time to jump on it.
exactly, it's, you can't wait.
Yeah.
And see, you know, I don't know, you know, off the top of my head, I'm thinking something like, I don't know, $10,000 or whatever, that to get something professional done. That uses the information that we put together for this workshop, and it comes, information that comes out of that workshop, and use that to sell it to.
So are there funding opportunities for that kind of stuff?
Well, I
we-
was just gonna say, well, whoever was gonna talk, go.
Go
but I-
for it, Kate. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say that like the Department of Tourism, like the State Department of Tourism has a grant for things like that. If it has like a tourism, like come here and enjoy our,
On the semi-local, or whatever.
The ultra local.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't, that's why I don't know if it would be a good fit. It
Semi-local.
has to have like a tourism bent. So I don't, but that's just one option that exists, and it is like specific for like video and photography marketing.
Media,
but-
visual media.
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
also thinking, do we have to get permission through the town? Cause almost like we're super emphasizing something that might take away from people's efforts and something else. I don't know if the town's gonna be in favor of us
we'd have to
hiring
think
a
about that.
marketing firm to focus on something we're interested in.
I definitely don't think the town can contribute any money to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm also thinking, will they support it? Because it is kind of like, okay, that's something the Conservation Commission values, and they're saying, the heck with what the town thinks, we're gonna promote it ourselves, kind of like.
Well, and then, I don't know, that's a good point. I had obviously just ginned that idea up while you were talking,
Yeah.
so I haven't thought it through all the way, but, if that does become a roadblock, and I can see how it could, and that would make sense, you know, maybe it wouldn't necessarily be the town that applies for the grant. It would be.
There could be
sustainable
sustainable
land or
Williston.
someone, or.
Yeah.
Sustainable
the grant
historically
guidelines.
hasn't handled any money, so we're a
Yeah.
we're a money-free organization.
Yeah, yeah.
Everything is volunteer
That can be
hours.
tricky, but the money can maybe be funneled through the town or something, I don't know.
But I wouldn't want those logistics to get in the way of that. You know, if there's an interest there, we could figure that out. Maybe it's another entity that would support it, a land trust, for example, or someone else who could do it on our behalf.
Well, that on the small scale, that one of the projects, Richmond actually, for the ERF fund, they used the tiny grant
Oh,
to,
to help
for,
support that.
to support it, and they have people write articles and ads and things. So
Yeah.
that's what they-
Or thinking more regionally, the RPC, Regional Planning Commission, Shannon County Regional Planning Commission could also be another good group to engage with on that. They wouldn't be Williston focused necessarily, but,
Right,
or Winooski Valley Park District. too.
yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so I put it on notes. I'm sensing a general like, okay, this is headed in a good direction in terms of the content and the outcomes.
Yeah.
Any feedback on that?
Is there any, just because I've been reading about Richmond and South Hero, I think it was, put the 1 cent tax, you know, I mean, they raised a lot of money. And it spreads it out to not only the taxpayers, but, you know, people coming to our community and using our, you know, box stores and, you know, trails and things like that.
The concept, the ERF was funded that way a long time ago.
Right.
And then we switched to the current method, so to the.
And it seems,
Ad
I
hoc
mean,
method.
we almost got zero. I mean, I think that's really, you know, nobody knows that.
I'm not sure we used that 1% tax thing, but we did have a thing like 1% of the town.
Exactly, it
budget
was-
goes into
yeah, it
was-
for some kind of percent like
Yes.
that, but we didn't use the 1% add-on tax.
Yeah, it wasn't,
It was before
it wasn't on the tax rate.
It was like a penny on the dollar.
Yeah, it was
Something
something like
like
that, it raised roughly 50, 60.
Yeah,
80.
I think it was a percentage of budget, whatever it was done based on a percentage of something. And then we switched.
They were
it
kind of
to-
going back to the way, the old days where we had to beg for it like crazy every year,
I
we
mean-
did talks all over the place.
Hmm.
And it's just like, Simon, you just said there's no money. The town doesn't have money to support any
Well,
of
it
this.
could be a conflict of
Right.
interest. for
Yeah,
them.
Yeah,
they're using their money in
I don't
different
think,
ways.
I don't think the town can pay money for one group to advocate for a budget increase
Right, that's what I
from the
was,
town.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, they might not be in favor of us even, like, spending our time working on that.
Well, we're volunteers, they can't.
Right, no, but I think the idea of.
Silent time, maybe.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, but I think the idea of involving the other groups in it, because it'll benefit them as well. And maybe it can be more of a general thing, but support us as well too.
So I'm just gonna say, would like to, in some way evaluate long-term funding options.
And I think
Yeah,
education is,
consistent, funding, long-term consistent funding.
Yeah, sustainable
Yeah,
funding.
sustainable funding, yeah.
Yeah, including the options tax. Not
But
options
I
tax,
think-
what's it called?
Yeah, I think you'd have a hard time doing, I mean, they've got that money spent 5 times already, probably in the town.
anticipation.
And then so you'd be pulling money away from other things.
Reed, have you, so I appreciate all your own
Yeah.
time that you're investing in this. So you mentioned 30 by 30 on one of your slides, the nature, and in my professional world, to me, when I hear 30 by 30, I think of Nature Conservancy. They're driving that conversation as far as I can see anyway, so I'm just wondering if you talked to Brenda or anyone at TNC.
I haven't, and I think if we want, if it's not obvious what the Conservation Commission's message would be in terms of the vision for conservation, that might be something that we want to invite some experts to come in and help us establish that vision so that we can advocate for it in the next town plan revision. Beyond we value conserving land, if we want to set specific targets, if we want to do things like that, I think we should back it up with working with some experts in the area of that target setting. The reason I brought up 30 by 30 was actually because I recently had a colleague at work who gave a presentation to the company on the COP15, the biodiversity, International Biodiversity Conference. Yeah, and that happened just a few months ago. I think it was like 6 months ago or something. And that's one of the main things that they are asking now. There's like 2 countries that have not signed on to it. The US is one of them, because the Senate would have to ratify it, and that'll never happen because of other political and financial commitment issues. But there's the White House administration has endorsed it, even though it hasn't been adopted by the country through the Senate. And so this kind of international conference on biodiversity is, they have put out this 30 by 30, and it's not just land, but it's also aquatic habitat too, that they're concerned about. So it's coming from a lot of different places, and I think it's coming at the international level. There's local, like Nature Conservancy has kind of, I think, adopted that and is kind of doing their own campaigning around it. I think setting short-term goals is really helpful for people. Things like 50 by 50 are too big for most people's brains to comprehend.
Yeah, I was thinking too, is there even 50 to conserve? I don't think so.
I mean,
if you consider all the developed pieces of Williston, you don't want to go advertising and promoting something that's impossible to
Right.
achieve.
And things like 50 by 50, I think, are more applicable to like the state or regional level, because there's going to be parts of the state that entire swaths can be
Yeah,
conserved. And then you could do 70 or 80% in some areas, and then other towns like Williston that have a lot of development pressure, it might be that we struggle to get to 50. But if we can at least get to 30, then we're doing our part to
What
contribute.
are we now, roughly 12 or
I think it was
15?
12 to 15%, somewhere in
I don't
there.
know, it's in my letter. to the
Yeah, it's in the
editor.
Yeah, it's around there. I remember people in town arguing that, don't ever get to 10, you know, back years ago when we were just promoting conservation.
Don't get to 10.
No, they thought that was way too high. But I mean, there aren't too many people, I forget the guy's name, he's since passed away, but he used to come to all of our public gatherings and argue against more conservation.
Yeah, so I think setting short-term goals in a visionary fashion in something like a town plan is really helpful, and I would love to have some guidance from other agencies or experts on kind of what are effective goals to set and why are those goals better than others. The really interesting one is this one that came up about 10-minute walk to
10-minute drive.
to parks. Yeah, being within 10 minutes of a park.
Walk.
Okay, and I don't remember what the name of the campaign is, but it's basically to say, it's more from a recreation. So is David still on? Yeah, so David, this one will probably speak to you, I think, a lot, is this idea about we should be focusing on conserving land such that every single person within a 10-minute walk can get to some sort of conserved open space. So.
Yeah, that was actually top of mind in our earlier agenda item of looking at that property.
Yeah.
Grants, yeah.
Yeah.
No, I like
so we're
that.
doing a little bit of that. We're doing a little bit of trying to spread the love on conserved areas in Williston, but we're also looking at habitat value and doing some prioritization based on that too. So it's good that we have both of those taken into account. So I'm going to plan to move forward with my planning. It sounds like timing, I'll coordinate with Simon to figure out the timing thing. I'll figure out possible spaces. We should probably discuss this one more time once we have some of that information. And I will bring these updates also to the Sustainable Williston group to get their inputs. But I'm guessing I'm just going to get a bunch of smiles and thumbs up saying, let me know how I can help. So
Sounds great. Awesome.
Okay, thanks,
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so we have a couple 15 minutes left for other
So I'm
business.
just gonna rattle through these. Chapin Reed and I applied for the watershed grant for $1,300 for Chapin to use to buy materials with Sustainable Williston to protect probably about 20, 25, 30 trees that they planted.
yeah, I think
down there.
24 is where we landed as a target. Yeah.
So we'll get notified about that at the end of March with approval if we get it April, May. So it'll be a summer project.
Also, those are reusable materials, so
Yeah.
they'll be able to use to protect trees this time, and they'll be able to be removed and added to new plantings in the future as those develop.
Select board last Tuesday, the Mud Pond Conservation Area Management Plan got approved by the select board. The trapping policy was agreed subject to legal review. So that's gone over to legal review now. It's quite a popular decision amongst people attending the select board meeting. And
Is
the
anybody against it at the? select
I
board
wouldn't say against it. There was a home owners association rep up from Old Stage Estates who wanted people to be
More.
aware. Because, obviously the problem they have there,
meeting? Yeah.
he wanted people to be aware that, trapping is necessary. So he made those points, and I think our policy A doesn't affect him because it's not our land. B doesn't, doesn't prohibit trapping altogether. We also, the Catamounts, there was a request for spending $3,000 from the Catamount Stewardship Fund on invasive control prior to the forestry management project. That got approved.
Oh, good.
We've got 10 minutes. So firstly, March 1st, I think we've got 4 people who are able to attend. So I know Eric, Terry and David are not here. And I think Gary, Reed, Laura and Kim will be here. So we can hold a meeting if people want to do that.
I don't know, what do you guys think?
It's up to you all.
We're actually, we have out of town company planning to arrive, I think, around that date. So I guess I would look for your guidance, Simon, on whether you feel like if we missed March 1st, what impact would there be to the schedule of topics?
So the things I want to talk about coming up, a green update. So we talked about that with staff. So May 6th, 8 till midday. We decided to shorten it by 2 hours.
May 6th, you said?
Yeah, Saturday, May 6th.
Yes, put on the
H12,
calendar.
it was 8 to 2 last year, but by about 12:30, we didn't get anyone coming because everyone was out doing their own thing.
Yeah.
This is when the town had the tents
Yeah,
and
the
all that
tent.
stuff.
So we had, everyone had there were various tables,
Yeah.
people could come and see, the Red Cross or the library. The fire department turned up their truck, you could go in the old schoolhouse. There were games on the lawn. You could pick up your green update bags. We got a load of stuff from Starbucks and Healthy Living.
Can you,
So,
it was May 6th and the time again, sorry.
8 AM to midday.
8 to 12, okay, I just want to make sure to get on my schedule, thanks.
So the town band are going to be playing this year at 11 AM. And I think this year we're thinking rather than each board having their own table in the tent, because I think we want to try and stick to the same type size tent because the bigger one is really expensive. We're thinking about having the boards do like activities. So, and what I mean by that is like, okay, 9 AM till 10 AM, what is conservation doing here? And do we want to start thinking about what that is? What we heard from Deb about No Mo Made, we want to make that along with Raise the Blade. Or do we want to think about handing out signs for that? Is that something we want to talk to people about? Getting some information about the benefits of that and try and promote that, or maybe we have other ideas about what we could do.
I would like to see us do that. I think generally helping
Yeah.
raise awareness about the razor blade and the No Mo May topics would be good. And then I also think if we have enough details about, like, let's say if we have a date for the event around conservation, the year after conservation.
Yeah.
It would be great to advertise that. I could even look into seeing whether I could create an RFID scannable thing that adds it to people's calendars, so they can just scan it with their phone and adds it to their Google Calendar or to their iPhone calendar, whatever they've got going. Because I think that would be a way to help
Yeah.
raise awareness about that.
So maybe if I put this on for our next meeting, we can talk about it in detail and figure out what we want to do.
Yeah, so if it was March 15th,
Yeah.
that's still enough ahead of May that we can
Right.
get behind what we're gonna do.
Yeah.
So it sounds like we might just cancel March 1.
Unless we haven't got any discretionary permits to discuss.
If we don't have any business that has to happen, then I guess that's my suggestion.
Yeah.
And if it's like Rita could suggest, or point out, if it's not gonna kill our following agendas to skip a meeting, then let's just do that and
Okay, sounds good.
give you a break for a day.
Instead, I'll write a profile for you that day for the website.
The second thing is, I think I mentioned at the meeting 2 weeks ago rather, that we didn't get the Caring for Canopies grant. We were going to do the tree survey. It seems something people were very interested in. I don't think we need the grant to do that. I talked to Joanne Garton, I think it was, from Vermont Forest Parks and Rec. So they've got quite a lot of help that they can provide if volunteers want to do the tree survey. So
Weren't they even willing to do the training?
yeah, so what they've got is they've got a program. They've got iPads and a data collection program that we can be borrowed, and they provide training. They've actually got a really good guide that they publish on their website. So Vermont Tree Inventory Guide, you should basically how to go about doing it and how to plan it.
That iPod like saves the location of the tree
Yeah,
and
so
any
you-
of the data that we.
Yeah, you'd go in, you'd log the location of the tree, the species, the condition, its address.
Notes.
Yeah, you can put notes on, you can take a picture of it, upload it, and then that will go into the Vermont
that sounds-
supercomputer, and then they give us a GIS.
That sounds pretty good.
Yeah, I think that sounds good.
Yeah, what
Sounds
does
especially-
I think that is better than having students build a back end or like a survey.
Yeah,
Yeah, so the programs that she sent us, Survey 1, 2, 3, which I think everyone's probably familiar with, and field maps as well. So they can, like in advance, they can come and give us a training on it, so we know how to use it.
How many groups can they have like 10 iPads? Or
I think
five?
they've got over 20, so.
Oh, wow, so we could get a good,
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, this sounds perfect. Basically, it sounds like they're set up to do what we want to do.
Yeah.
And we just need to bring the people
yeah,
and provide opportunity for folks to get educated before they go out in the field.
yeah, so a couple of things here. I started looking at what we're doing, so this actually has some pretty helpful
Look at
information.
that.
So how many
It's like they
volunteers
know.
are needed? So 2 to 3 volunteers working together can cover about 2.5 to 3 miles of streets.
That's actually really helpful information
Yeah.
to estimate volunteers,
Yeah,
how many to send to each
A
area or
mile.
something.
So like a mile per day per volunteer.
yeah,
Definitely teams are helpful because you can mix up the experience level too, so that, you know, if like one person's doing one side of the street and the other's doing the other side of the street, if you have a more experienced person and a less experienced person, they can ask questions.
Yeah.
So that's another thing that I would like to see us do.
so you think we can pull that off?
well,
This spring,
yeah, I mean,
or is it too
I've
soon?
started having a look at this and just trying to figure out what roads have street trees and what don't. So based on what I haven't finished this yet, but based on what I've found today, we've got like 7.5 miles of road. I've started getting back towards the early 2000s subdivisions. I'm not going to find a huge amount more after that. And this is just in the RZD.
So this includes the ones that weren't inventoried before?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think we re-inventory what we did before.
Yeah.
For a lot of them, we have subdivision landscaping plans that we can also take out, and they should provide us help guide if, like, you know, obviously, I don't know if they're going to be.
I'm just laughing because none of the trees are
So
as.
you'll see my note here, which is Hamlet ad hoc sign off
Yeah.
IZA, which is its own special history.
Yeah,
That's it.
that's my neighborhood, that's my neighborhood.
Oh,
Yeah,
that was before my time, I guess.
2006.
Yeah.
All right.
So is this like,
So wait, if it's 8 miles, so that's like 1 day with 8 volunteers. Or
yeah,
2 days with 4 volunteers, something like that.
yeah, and I think that doesn't include us going into like the library, or, you know, it's not gonna take long to survey around here. Town-owned
Okay.
properties as well.
Which would be great to have that
Yeah.
inventory, yeah. Okay, so maybe it's a 2-day event.
I think
something like
so.
that.
I know we previously talked about using students to do this, which would be great. The flip side of that is that we wouldn't be able to do it when the leaves are out, because they're all, you know, packing up by the end of May, and they've also got other priorities then.
Alternatively, it could be like first thing in September if we really
Yeah.
want college students.
Yeah,
Or could we think about K through 12 student whose school year goes later and would be in session at the end of June? I have no connection with how that would work. It's just a thought.
You're gonna send.
Hey,
Nico
I'm
out
sorry, I have
first?
to drop off. Thanks.
Okay.
I'm also gonna have to go in like 2 minutes because I also have a 9 o'clock Zoom, but Nico would be thrilled to walk around the streets.
yeah,
I don't think.
He
we
would
need
be
to
like
solve-
in his element.
We don't need to solve it today, but I would love to see the students do inventories of all the trees on the school property. And have
Mhm.
that be part of our layer, and that
That's a
would
cool
be
idea.
right, they wouldn't have to like go on a field trip to like neighborhoods to do that.
Right, and
So-
I'm conscious that one of the things we might need to do in certain instances is measure the right of the way from the center of the road, where trees, we're unsure if it's.
So you gotta go in the road and.
Yeah,
yeah, don't have students running around.
So I like the idea of the student K through 8 type idea, but I think it's better suited to non-residential roadway assessment. And I love the idea of people in Williston who wish they could identify trees, getting an opportunity to at least start with street trees. And the fact that without a defined program like what you put up on the screen, I would say it'd be much better to have like college students who are interested in this type of thing and would be like their aptitude to pick it up quickly and do it well, I feel like would be pretty good. But the way this is laid out, I feel like you could probably have members of the public who just wish they could identify trees, come in and learn how to do it. And
I
then
bet
go out
those
and do it.
iPads even had like little pictures of leaves for each
Yeah, so
tree's
this-
ID. So
This
you know,
document has stuff at the back, you know, we could probably buy some simple tree ID guides.
yeah,
And I think if we try and get at least one person in each team who's got some
An expert.
skills.
there's apps for your
Yeah.
phone now that
Yeah.
are free that can take a picture of
Yeah.
a leaf and
Google.
it tells you what it is.
Google.
I'll
Yeah.
just plug my alma maters, one of my alma maters, sorry, UVM. Virginia Tech has V-Tree, and it's like a dichotomous key app that was
Nice.
developed
Yeah, that's really nice.
but in my PhD granting department, so I'm very proud of it. I had nothing to do with it, but it's pretty good.
So based on how structured this could be, I would love to see us consider at least just having it be open to the public. If you want to help the town, this is the way you can do it, and you'll get free training and work with a team, including an expert, to go out and do an inventory.
Yeah, and I think fall is a good time, early fall or late summer, early fall, and would be a good time to do it. Because it's hard to do without leaves.
Yeah.
Especially to new people that have never done any tree ID before.
Like a September.
And but maybe I don't know, maybe we can try the system out, Simon, maybe have some training before that and that kind of stuff, get it. It'd be interesting so it sounds like we might need as many as 8 or 10 iPads if we had that many people. I don't know, or do you need one per crew
I
or?
think you probably need one per crew,
Yeah,
but
so,
we can talk to Joanne about that.
yeah.
And the training day could be doing like the town offices
Yeah,
space here, let's go around with the whole group together. Let's
Yeah, here's how it
practice,
works.
and then you can go out and do your area.
All right, I gotta run to my next meeting. When
Okay.
I run to my next meeting, I mean, we close this Zoom meeting and open.
I actually do need to run to my next meeting now, so, all right, thanks,
Bye.
Kim. Thanks,
Thanks,
Reed, for
everyone.
joining. Today.